Okay, let's take a look at some of these questions. And starting with the first one, it says, which of the following is not a component of agronomy? Now, what is agronomy? This has to do with study of crops. And agronomy not only involves the study of crops, it also has to do with pest management. It also has to do with soil management. So having that as a background knowledge, I think you should be able to answer this question properly. It says, which of the following is not a component of agronomy? So here we have A, crop production, soil management, pest management, animal husbandry. Remember, from the definition of agronomy, I said it has to do with study of crops, and it also has to do with soil management and pest management. So that tells us that the first three are correct. Crop production is a component of agronomy. Soil management is also a component of agronomy. Pest management is also a component, but animal husbandry is not a component. Next question is, which of the following is not a principle of agronomy? Based on our definition of agronomy, that could also help guide us on the right answer. Maximizing crop yield. So it has to do with crop production or crop management. Managing soil fertility, which is still connected to soil, and agronomy is still connected to soil management. Controlling pests and diseases. Since we're dealing with crops, these crops will be exposed to pests and diseases, so that's a principle that is part of agronomy. And the last we have is promoting biodiversity conservation. So that is not a principle that is concerned with agronomy, so we have that as the answer. Next, what is agronomy? Based on our definition, that should also guide us here. A says the study of animal breeding and genetics. B, the study of crop production and soil management, which has to do with agronomy. Study of plant disease and pest control, which has to do with agronomy. Then the study of agricultural machinery and equipment. Well, machinery can still be connected to cultivation of our crops, which has to do with soil, which is still connected to cultivation. So I would choose study of animal breeding and genetics, which seems to be okay. Sorry, the question is what is, not which is not needed here. Okay, the question is what is agronomy? So it has to do with study of crop production and soil management. Okay, that's the answer, because it deals with crop production and it also deals with soil management. So the answer is B. Okay. Now, what is crop science? From the options, we have study of agricultural machinery and equipment. Nope. Study of plant genetics and breeding. C says study of soil fertility and nutrient management, which is just connected to soil. D talks about weather, study of the weather patterns and the impact on crop growth. So I think the answer here should be plant genetics and breeding. That's what soil science is concerned with. Now we have number 5 says, what is rock weathering and how does it affect agriculture? From the definition of weathering, we know that weathering has to do with the breaking down of rocks to form soil. So let's take a look at the options. So rock weathering is the process of breaking down rocks into smaller fragments. That should possibly be the answer. But let's look at the other options. We said rock weathering is the process of rocks absorbing water. Nope. Rock weathering is the process of rocks decomposing and releasing nutrients. Nope. Rock weathering is the process of rocks eroding and washing away. Nope. So the answer here is breaking down. That's the key word there. So the answer is A. Next, we have what is the soil profile and what information does it provide in agricultural practices? Now, soil profile has to do with the vertical section. That's the meaning of soil profile, the vertical section of the soil showing different horizons. So that's the key word there, is vertical section. So let's take a look at the options. We have A soil profile is a vertical section of the soil that reveals its layers or horizon. So that's possibly the answer, but let's still look at others. A soil profile is a measurement of soil pH and nutrient level. No. A soil profile is an assessment of soil compaction and drainage. Nope. A soil profile is an analysis of soil microorganisms and their activities. So the answer is A. Is a vertical section of the soil that reveals its layers or horizons. Now, what is soil conservation and why is it important in agriculture? The word conservation means to preserve. So if we have that as a background knowledge, we should be able to get the answer. So the first option says soil conservation refers to the preservation and sustainable management of soil resources. So possibly that should be our answer, but let's look at other options. Soil conservation involves the removal of the topsoil. No, that's erosion. Soil conservation focuses on increasing soil fertility through use of chemical fertilizers. Well, that is part of conservation, but that doesn't totally explain it well. It says soil conservation aims to maximize crop yields through intensive farming practices. Nope. The answer is A. Soil conservation refers to the preservation and sustainable management of soil resources. Next, we have what is the main components of soil. Now, soil is made up of several things. We have air, water, organic components, inorganic components, minerals, which has to do with the inorganic matter found in soil. So let's take a look at the options. Sand, silt, and clay, they are made up of soil. Now, they are components found in soil. Organic matter is a component found in soil. Minerals, air is also found in soil. Water is found in soil. Nutrients and microorganisms are also found in soil. So the answer here is all of the above. All of these are found in soil. Now, what are the important properties of soil in agriculture? So here we're talking about both the physical properties and chemical properties. And let's look at the options. We have texture, structure, fertility. Texture is a physical property. Structure is also a physical property. Fertility is, well, connected to a chemical property. Then we have pH, chemical property, organic matter content, physical property, water holding capacity, drainage, physical property, cation exchange capacity, chemical property, soil depth. So all of these are actually properties of soil in agriculture. So the answer is all of the above. What factors influence soil fertility in agriculture? Fertility, when we talk about fertility, we are talking about the ability of the soil to possess all the required minerals and nutrients, that required elements, macro elements or micro elements in the appropriate quantity that will enhance the proper growing of our crops. So let's look at factors that can influence the fertility of our soils in agriculture. Here we have organic matter content and nutrient availability. It does affect fertility. Organic matter, we're talking about decomposed plant and animal remains. It does affect soil fertility. The pH and the soil structure also affects soil fertility. A soil that is acidic will lead to loss of some nutrients or some nutrients in the soil or elements in the soil, which is also a factor that can influence fertility. Soil texture and drainage also will influence soil fertility. The texture of our soil, soil texture has to do with the degree of fineness and coarseness of our soil, and this can also affect the fertility of our soil. Okay, so the answer here is all of the above. What are the main differences between monocot and dicot plants? That's monocotyledonous plants and dicotyledonous plants. Now, you need to have a general knowledge about the features of monocotyledonous plants and dicotyledonous plants. Now, monocot has to do with when we talk about one seed leaf, and dicot has to do with having two seed leaves. Generally, people have this knowledge, But there are other things you should know about monocotyledonous plants and dicotyledonous plants. You have to know the type of veins on the leaves they possess. You also have to know the type of flowers, how the flowers occur. You also need to know the type of root systems they have. So based on that knowledge, you will be able to answer this question. So let's look at it. A option says monocots have parallel leaf veins, which is correct. And dicots have branched leaf veins. Now let me give you an illustration of a plant that is a monocot, and I think it's a popular plant we should know, that the maize plant. If you look at the leaves of the maize, you can see that the veins on the leaves are parallel. That's straight lines on the leaves. While another plant, example of a plant that is a dicot, is the beans plant. If you look at the beans plant, you see that the leaves have net veins, that the veins are scattered. They don't follow a straight pattern line on it. So you can see that monocots have a parallel leaf veins while dicots have branched leaf veins. The next option is monocots have flower parts in multiples of 3, while dicots have flower parts in multiples of 4 or 5 is correct. Monocots have a fibrous root system and the dicots have a taproot system, which is also correct. So all of these are differences between the monocots and the dicots. So the answer is all of the above. What is pollination in plants? Now, from the word pollination, we have pollen comes to mind, and pollen has to do with the male gametes from the male part of a flower. Now, the flower is a reproductive organ of a plant, and in the flowers we have the male part and the female part. So the male part, the stamen, while the female part is the pistil, and under the stamen we have the anther and the filament, while the female part has the stigma, ovary, stigma, style, and ovary. So here the pollen grains are found in the anther. Remember I said the male part of the flower has the anther and the filament, and the pollen grains are found in the anther. So these pollen grains are usually transferred from the anther to the stigma of a flower. The stigma is on the female part of the flower, so that's correct. So then the next one says the next option is the process of seed formation after fertilization. We're not talking about fertilization here, we're talking about pollination. Then the production of flowers by a plant. No, that's not what pollination is about. Then dispersal of seeds by winds. We're not talking about dispersal of seeds. We're talking about the transfer of pollen grains. So the answer is A. That's what pollination is. The next here is which of the following is not an agent of pollination in plants? So when we talk about agents, we're talking about a means by which pollination takes place in plants. We have bees as the first option. Bees are agents of pollination in plants. That's through bees, pollination can take place. That's what it means. How? When the bees feed on nectar, which is a sweet sugary substance in plants. In that process of feeding on the nectars, they trample on the flowers, and the pollen grains stick to their feet, and as they move to another flower or still on the same flower, trying to suck nectar, they transfer the pollen grains. So bees are agents of pollination. We also have wind. Wind is air in motion, so as it's blowing, these pollen grains that are light, they're usually light, can also be transferred. We also have water as another means by which pollen grains can be transferred. But fungi is not an option, so fungi is not an agent of pollination. Which of the following is a method of plant propagation that involves the use of plant parts? Now, when we talk about propagation, we're talking about production of independent or new units of plants. So, methods of plant propagation involves, we have seed propagation. Okay, but the question says which of the following is a method of plant propagation that involves the use of plant parts? Now, we're talking about a part of the plant. So when we talk about seeds, seed has to do with sexual propagation, And we have two types of propagation. We have sexual, we have asexual propagation. So when we talk about seeds, you're talking about sexual propagation. And when we're referring to it, the question says a plant, part of the plant. So asexual propagation has to do with the production of new individual plants from a part of the parent. So you can see that the A option is out. We have grafting. Grafting is part of asexual propagation, and it involves taking a part of a plant of the same species and joining it to another part of another plant. That part that is cut off is called the scion, while the part that it is joined to is called the stalk. So grafting has to do with taking a part of the plant and joining to another part of the plant, which is usually rooted, and that process is called grafting. So the answer should be B. But let's look at tissue culture. Tissue culture has nothing to do with plant propagation, while layering is does not involve taking out a plant part, though it's still asexual propagation, where we have air layering, which is also known as Monocot, where the back of the tree or a branch is exposed, maybe about 2 centimeters is cut, and the cambium is now exposed, and then sphagnum moss is wrapped around it and trying to encourage rooting. That's the development of roots around that area. That's layering. We're not talking about layering. Does not involve taking a part of the plant. So the answer here is grafting. Which of the following is not a branch of agriculture? Now, horticulture, let's look at horticulture. Horticulture is a part or a branch of agriculture, which has to do with the production. Horticulture involves production of fruits, vegetables, and ornamental plants. Forestry has to do with the management of trees, either planted or grown wild, and also forest resources too. That's forestry, is part of agriculture. Zoology is connected more to biology, in the sense that it deals with animals, but here is talking about not just farm animals, including animals in the wild, and has to do with embryology, classification of animals generally, both living animals, animals that are extinct. So zoology has to do with animals, quite right, which is still connected to agriculture, but it is beyond the scope of farm animals. So that will not be a branch that's connected to agriculture. But agronomy is. Remember, we've established that fact. Agronomy has to do with study of crops, also has to do with management of our soil, also has to do with pest management. So the answer here is zoology. Zoology is not a branch of agriculture. Which of the following are branches of agriculture? Now we're looking at branches of agriculture. Previous was not a branch of agriculture. Now this question has to do with the branches of agriculture. And biology and chemistry, there are aspects connected to agriculture, but it's not a branch. Economics is also an aspect of agriculture, but remember, they are pairing them up together. Maths too has some aspects in agriculture, but it's not a branch. Botany, zoology too. Botany has to do with crops, zoology has to do with animals, but remember, it covers more than farm animals and agricultural crops too. It talks about all crops and all animals. So that also has nothing to do with, it's not really a branch of agriculture. Then agronomy and horticulture, these two are branches of agriculture that are specifically concerned with agriculture. So what is subsistence agriculture? Here we have from our basic knowledge of types of agriculture, we have subsistence and commercial agriculture. And when we talk about subsistence, we're talking about agriculture on a small scale, whereby the farmer produces just enough to feed himself and his family with little or no surplus for sale. So let's look at the options. The first option says large-scale commercial farming. Nope. That has to do with commercial agriculture. Farming for self-sufficiency and survival. That possibly should be the answer. But let's look at other options. Intensive farming using advanced technology. Nope. When they talk about subsistence agriculture, if you look at the characteristics of subsistence agriculture, they do not use chemicals, they do not employ skilled labor. Is at a subsistence is usually practiced by peasant farmers. No record keeping, no advanced technology, so that's not the answer. Export-oriented agricultural production. Remember, subsistence agriculture involves producing food just for the farmer and his family with little or no surplus for sale. So the answer here is farming for self-sufficiency and survival. Now let's look at what is commercial agriculture. We have established the fact that subsistence has to do with small scale of cultivating for the farmer and his family, while commercial has to do with cultivating on a large scale with surplus for sale. So let's look at the option. Farming for self-sufficiency and survival. Nope. Small scale farming with limited use of modern technology. Commercial has nothing to do with small scale farming. Large scale farming for profit and market oriented production. That should be the answer. Though there are two similar close answers. Intensive farming using advanced technology. You can practice intensive farming, but the definition of commercial agriculture is more of cultivating on a large scale for profit making. So C is the ideal option, is the proper option. What is the importance of agriculture? Why is agriculture important? I know that based on the topic, importance of agriculture is important both to the farmer, to the society, to the nation in different aspects. But basically, the purpose for getting involved in agriculture is for food. So let's take a look at the options. Agriculture provides employment opportunities only in rural areas. Nope. It does provide employment opportunities, but it's not only in rural areas. And agriculture is essential for food production and food security. That possibly should be the answer, but let's look at other options. Agriculture has no significant impact on the economy. Agriculture does have significant impact. So that answer is wrong. Agriculture is primarily focused on the production of cash crops for exports. Agriculture is not primarily focused on cash crops. We have arable crops and other food crops that are consumed by man. So that option is wrong. So the proper option here is agriculture is essential for food production and food security. What is agricultural ecology? When we talk about ecology, we're talking about plants and animals relating or interrelation between the living aspect and the non-living components in an ecosystem. So of course the living components are the plants and animals interacting with the non-living components in an ecosystem. Now let's look at the options. The study of agricultural practices and the economic impact on farmers. Nope. The study of ecological processes in agricultural systems and their interactions. Now when we talk about ecology, we're talking about interactions between the living and non-living components. So that should possibly be the answer. But let's look at other options. The study of genetics and breeding techniques used in agriculture. No, that's not it. The study of climate change and its effects on agricultural production. The answer is B. Study of ecological processes in agricultural systems and their interaction. Which of the following is an example of a biotic factor in an agricultural ecosystem? Now, when we talk about biotic, we're talking about the living factors in an ecosystem. Here we're looking at this ecosystem, of course, a self-sustaining system where the living components interact with the non-living components. So let's look at the biotic factors. When we talk about biotic, we're talking about the living factors or living organisms. So let's look at the options. We have soil pH, that's not a living factor. Temperature is not a living factor. Rainfall is also not a living factor, but crop pest is a living factor. So our answer is crop pest. What are biotic factors in an agricultural ecosystem? Remember I said biotic factor has to do with the living components or living organisms found in an ecosystem. So the answer is already seen there. The first says factors related to physical environments, factors related to living organisms, factors related to availability of nutrients, and factors related to climate and weather. Remember I said biotic factors has to do with the living factors in an ecosystem. So the answer is B. What are abiotic factors in an agricultural ecosystem? I've established the fact that biotic factors are the living factors, so abiotic factors are the non-living factors, which can also be seen as the physical environment in an ecosystem. So the answer is A, actually, factors related to the physical environment here. So we have factors related to the living organism, nope. Factors related to availability of nutrients, nope. And factors related to climate and weather. Well, climate, weather, nutrients are still part of the non-living factors in an ecosystem, but the first option gives a more holistic answer to this question. So factors related to the physical environment should be the answer. What is animal production in agriculture? Now, talking about animal production, we're looking about management, rearing of our animals. So let's see the option. Cultivation of crops for animal consumption. That's the wrong answer. Let's look at management and care of livestock for various purposes. That should possibly be the answer, but let's look at other options. The production of animal-based products such as milk and eggs. You see, they're just talking about an aspect, production of animal-based products, which are like byproducts. That is just an aspect of animal production, but that animal production is broader than that. Okay, breeding and genetic improvement of animals for specific trade is still an aspect of animal production, but we have to look at it holistically. The answer is management and care of livestock for various purposes. The Ndama breed of cattle is primarily raised for. Now, Ndama is a breed of cattle that is found in Africa. We have other breeds of cattle, and this breed is specifically meant for meat production. Not for, yes, it can produce milk, it can produce draft, that means used as a work animal. Of course, fiber production is off. That answer is wrong, but the primary purpose for Ndama breed of cattle is not for milk production, it's for meat. It's one of the animals. We know cattle production can be classified into three. We have milk, dairy animals, we have meat, we also have dual purpose animals. So based on knowledge, background knowledge, Ndama falls under breeds of cattle for meat production. Okay, this question says, which breed of sheep is commonly found in Nigeria and known for its meat production? The first option here we have is Dopa, and Dopa is found in South Africa, so that answer is wrong. The next option is West African dwarf sheep, which is found from the name West Africa. We know Nigeria is part of West Africa, so that could possibly be the answer. Though we still need to look at other options. We have Uda. Now this Uda can also be spelled O-U-D-A. Uda is also found in Nigeria. In fact, there are about 4 breeds of sheep that are commonly found in Nigeria. We have the Yankasa breed, the Balami breed, Uda, and the West African dwarf. So these 4 breeds are commonly found in Nigeria. So these 2 options are possibly the answer, but we're going to choose one from there. But for the last option, we have Barbados black belly. Now, from the name Barbados, this has to do with the Caribbean, so that option is out. So Dopa and Barbados black belly are knocked out. So what we have here is West African dwarf sheep and the Uda sheep. Now let's have a brief talk about the West African dwarf sheep here, this sheep originated from Senegal. Now let's look at the origin, and I believe the origin will help us to actually know. I believe where a product or a breed originates from, that particular location should have it being more commonly found in that location. So West African dwarf sheep originated from Senegal, Gabon, Congo, yes, Senegal, Gabon, Congo, Chad, and I think Cameroon. So these are the areas where it originated from. Nigeria was not mentioned there. But for the Uda sheep originated from Niger, Chad, northern Cameroon, and northern Nigeria. So I would choose Uda. Some may choose West African dwarf sheep, but I would choose Uda because I feel, based on the origin, the Uda should be commonly found in Nigeria because it originated partly from Nigeria. So I choose Uda. And remember, they also talked about for meat production. When we look at the weight for West African dwarf sheep, the male and female weigh approximately 35 kilograms, but for the Uda, the male weighs up to 68 kilograms, while the female weighs between 35 and 40, averagely between 35 and 40 kilograms. So I'll choose the Uda as the option answer. Now we have Sokoto Gudali. Now this is a breed, that's when under animal production you have to have a good knowledge on the various breeds of animals, and based on that knowledge, Sokoto Gudali is a breed of cattle. It's not a breed of chicken, it's not a breed of goat, it's not a breed of horse. So the answer is cattle. We have Balami. Remember when I was talking about 4 breeds of sheep that are common in Nigeria, I mentioned the West African dwarf sheep, Uda sheep, Yankasa, and Balami. So Balami is a breed of sheep. What is the process of removing the horns of a cattle called? Now, we have castration, which has to do with removing of the testicles of the male animals. We have dehorning, so that should possibly be the answer from the name, removing. D means like an absence, dehydrate, that's lack of hydration. So dehorning should be, from logic, should be the answer. But in this case, let's still look at other options. We have dipping. Dipping has to do with controlling of ectoparasites in farm animals using a trench, which is like an excavation where pesticides are placed, which are agrochemicals placed inside and filled with water, where the animals can be passed through, and this helps to control ectoparasites like ticks, lice. The chemicals used are called acaricides. So that's just for dipping, for background knowledge. But for mating, of course, has to do with the union of that's animals carrying out sexual intercourse. But remember, for animals, we don't use the word sexual intercourse, we use the word mating. So the option here is the correct answer as regards removing the horns of cattle is called dehorning. Now, which of the following is an example of a monogastric animal? Now, when we talk about the type of stomachs found in animals, farm animals, we have the monogastric animals and we have polygastric animals. Monogastric animals are known as non-ruminants, while polygastric animals are known as ruminants. Ruminants have 4 stomach compartments, that's they have a complex stomach, while monogastric animals have a simple stomach. And we know that ruminants are polygastric animals, they are not monogastric. Mono means one. So looking at this, cow has 4 stomach, is a ruminant, the sheep is a ruminant, the goat is a ruminant. They have 4 stomach compartments. Polygastric animals, they are not monogastric animals. So the answer here is chicken. Now, which of the following is an example of agricultural technology? Remember, we talked about one of the aspects when it comes to agricultural science as a student, that you need to have knowledge on is agricultural technology. There are 5 aspects I mentioned when I was talking about the key areas that every student should know as an agricultural science student writing UTME. I mentioned agricultural technology. Now look at this question. It says, which of the following is an example of agricultural technology? When we talk about technology, application of scientific knowledge, that's what technology is about. So here we have crop rotation. Crop rotation is a farming system. Composting is also a farming system where plant and animal residues are rotting down. Irrigation has to do with technology. It's a device that is used to apply water artificially to the farmland. Then organic farming has to do with more of farming that has to do with probably using eco-friendly systems of farming that is not hazardous to the environment. So that doesn't have to do with technology per se. So the answer here is irrigation. What is the primary purpose of farmstead planning in agriculture? When we talk about the farmstead, we're looking at the farmer's house and his production center, which is like a production center. It's just a land containing the farmer's house and his production. It's like a production center. So what is the primary purpose of a farmstead? Here, okay, farmstead planning in agriculture. So when we're looking at farmstead planning, we're looking at how to structure and properly place the production structures, the storage structures, processing structures, the farmer's house. All of these need to be properly placed. And what's the purpose of planning a farmstead? Let's look at the options and see if we can pick the answer from there. We said maximizing crop yield. Well, yes, when your farmstead is properly planned and you grow your crops on the fertile soils and the infertile soils are used for raising of structures, that could also help maximize crop yield, but that's not the primary purpose of farmstead planning. Ensuring efficient water usage. Yes, it's when you plan, that may be a factor, but that's not a primary purpose of farmstead planning. Optimizing livestock management is also a factor where you're able to manage your livestock properly because the buildings are properly located close to where the farmer is resident, but that's not the primary purpose. Efficient utilization of available space. Yes, when you plan your farmstead, is in order to ensure that the space available is properly utilized. So this should be the correct answer. Now, what is the primary purpose of farm surveying in agriculture? What is surveying? Survey is the process of mapping out the size, measuring and mapping out the size, topography of our land, the boundaries of our lands. You measure, you map. That's what survey is all about. So let's look at the options here. Determining soil fertility. That's not the purpose of farm survey. Identifying pest infestation. That's not the purpose, the primary purpose of farm survey. Mapping land boundaries. Yes, that should be based on the definition. You can see that should be the answer. Then the last is assessing crop yield. That's not the purpose of farm survey. So we'll take mapping land boundaries. Now, which of the following is an example of a farm implement used for soil preparation in agriculture? Now, we have certain farm implements that are used to prepare our soil. We have the primary tillage implements and we have secondary tillage. Primary is what you used first, which has to do with the plow. The secondary tillage, we have the harrow and the reeders. But from here, we can see the options. They say spray. Spray is not a tillage, it's not a farm implement for preparing the soil. Yeah, spray is for applying chemicals. Harvesting is for harvesting the produce of our crops. Seeder is for applying seeding. That's for sowing our seeds into the soil. Plow, though the spelling is not correct, it's P-L-O-U-G-H. That should be the correct spelling for this option. But the plow is an implement used to prepare the soil. and it's a primary tillage implement. So the answer is plow. The next we have is, which of the following is a handy tool commonly used in agriculture for cutting grasses or crops? We have the plow, we have the harrow, we have the scythe. The scythe, yes, we have the seeder. The plow is for soil tillage. The harrow is also a tillage implement. It's a secondary tillage implement that I use after the plow. Then we have the scythe. The scythe is used for cutting our grasses and crops. So that's the answer. Then seeder, as I said earlier, is for sowing of our seed. So the answer is the scythe. What is the primary goal of agricultural extension services in the field of agricultural economics? Now, when we talk about economics, we're talking about marketing, we're talking about financing, managing of finance, we're talking about factors of production that are harnessed or properly utilized, land, labor, capital, entrepreneurship. So, but when we look at extension services, we're talking about that's the transfer of information from research institutes to our farmers. The purpose is to help them imbibe modern farming techniques and so on. So let's look at the option. To maximize crop yields, to increase farm profits, promoting sustainable farming practices, enhancing market access for farmers. Well, I would choose promoting sustainable farming practices, because the aim of extension service is to actually transfer information to our farmers. But the question here is that it's linked to agricultural economics. And if we're looking at agricultural economics, economics has to do with finances, it has to do with marketing. Yes, it also has to do with combining the factors of production. So, okay, I would think the answer should be either between marketing, enhancing market access for farmers, and increasing farmers' profit. So I'll choose enhancing market access for farmers. Which of the following is an example of agricultural extension method used to disseminate information to farmers? That's the aim of agricultural extension. It has to do with disseminating information. That's giving information to farmers. Here we have crop rotation. That's a farming system, so that has nothing to do with dissemination of information. Soil testing, that's to test whether a soil, either for fertility or pH, that also has nothing to do with disseminating information. It means through which information is passed to the farmers. Irrigation system is also an agricultural technology. That's just not part of it. So farmers field schools has to do with a demonstration plot that helps to educate our farmers on good farming techniques. So the answer is C. Which of the following is a common problem in agricultural economics and extension? Lack of access to modern technology, excessive government regulations, over-reliance on chemical inputs, inadequate market infrastructure. Excessive government regulations, which is still connected to agricultural economics based on policies set up by the government. Over-reliance on chemical inputs, no. Inadequate market infrastructure. I'll choose lack of access to modern technology. So which of the following is best describes agricultural marketing? What is marketing? That has to do with the processes involved in the movement of goods from the producers to the consumer. The producer is the farmers to the consumers. So let's look at the options. The process of producing agricultural goods. Production is not marketing. Transportation of agricultural products to the consumers is still part of marketing, but that's not a good description of agricultural marketing. Promotion and selling of agricultural products. Yes, marketing has to do with a process of distributing our produce, agricultural goods, from the producers to the consumers. It involves promotion, selling, so that should be the proper answer. Storage and preservation is also an aspect, but it's not the proper description of marketing, agricultural marketing. And the last says, which of the following is an objective of agricultural development programs? Why are agricultural development programs set up? The first option is maximizing profits for individual farmers. Next is increasing dependency on external inputs. Then we have enhancing sustainable agricultural practices. And the last is expanding large land holdings for large-scale farmers. So why is it that agricultural development programs are actually established? I think the ideal answer here should be to enhance sustainable agricultural practices. That's the essence for programs that have been established by governments and also non-governmental organizations. So the option here is C. Yeah, thank you for listening. I hope you would excel here.